And this is informal, so unless you start fighting, I won't need to run anything.
We'll fight politely.
Yeah, right. You never fight politely.
Okay, informally then we'll fight it.
There you go. That's better.
Great. Well, Madam President, do you want me to kick us off?
I do.
Okay, thank you. So President Anderson, managers, we've got a presentation here for you, and I'll give a little intro. The board held a budget workshop, the first budget workshop on May 12th, and discussed high-level priorities for the 2027 budget. And then the board directed staff to prepare a proposed draft budget in accordance with those priorities. So we distributed the proposed budget to the board last Tuesday, and that budget addresses the priorities discussed, which we'll get into. And so the purpose of this presentation is to present that budget, address those priorities, and provide some additional key information to sort of prime the discussion from that point. So kind of hoping we'll get through the slides, and then that'll prime the discussion. Additionally, a few other topics have come up since the budget packet was distributed last Tuesday. And we do have a slide at the end of this presentation as a placeholder for those additional discussion items. But again, I recommend we get through the high-level budget overview points first before we start to dive into specific line items and certain details. So we distributed these slides, so I'll go through some of these to sort of set the stage of where the district is at in its history. We've used this chart over the past few budget cycles. It summarizes the district's history, which entailed a sort of planning period and relatively low levy in the early years toward the left of the graph, and a significant levy increase in 2009, and then kept that flat for several years, and that built up the district's fund balance. And then from there got into this sort of water quality implementation period, which has resulted in significant improvements to our lakes and 2 lake impairment delistings, which we're excited to celebrate. We're getting close to achieving our water quality goals, but there will be a need to maintain them into the future. And we're also looking to improve watershed climate resiliency as much as we can. So there's still more work to be done. And so when you're looking at the graph, note the gap between the levy, which is the green line, and the expenditures, which is the red line, and that is covered by grants, loans, and other revenues. And so by leveraging those other funding and financing sources, we've been able to achieve a lot more than we would have been able to do with levy funds alone. And we've got a lot of notes on grants and things like that coming up.
Can I just clarify one thing? In the beginning, if you go back to that chart, we were restricted to $250,000 a year in raising from levy funds. And that's because even though Washington County is in the metro area, I think it's 5 or 6 counties that make up that metro area, we were not counted as that because of the addition of Chisago County. Obviously, it's not our metro county. And it took us until 2007, 2008, actually was when the legislation changed to make us a part of the metro. And so that meant that we could budget from our own budgets that we created every year. So just so people understand how bad it was back then and how tight it was. And we were able to get those big foundational, one a year completed foundational studies to move forward. And then 2008 is when the legacy amendment was passed. And it took about 3 to 4 years for that to get all, built, if you will, the foundation built at the state level. And that's when we really started seeing grants come available. So you can understand why that chart looks the way it does. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yep, good additions. Here's just a brief overview of the priorities that we had documented from budget workshop number 1, and I'll go through each of these individually in the following slides. And then at the bottom, in addition to the board's discussion, the Community Advisory Committee had their meeting on May 19th, and on the agenda was a review of the 2025 audit. And that kind of turned into some of them asking some questions and discussing the budget, and they made several recommendations for general budget priorities. And a lot of these already overlap with priorities that were already mentioned by board members on May 12th. And we'll get into it, but the 2027 budget does address these priorities as well. So we're really hoping that as we get into this budget, we can show that we're addressing these comments that were made.
Say, Emily, can you just take some comments? I wrote to you, but I'll just mention it now since we're on the priority page. I think greenbelt and open space was initially kind of a secondary goal to the floodplain maintenance operation that we were trying to move forward. But as you pointed out in your response to my questions, we have done some greenbelt and open space individually and separately as the opportunities presented themselves, mainly because we had them covered by grants. So I think we should definitely, though, add in here as a priority floodplain resiliency and control, because that's really what the major effort was. When we moved away from water quality into the next area, it was climate control and flood resilience.
They go hand in hand. I actually think that the green space is really the umbrella for it all. Because if you leave space the way it is, open and natural, you're building catch basins, without creating these big pools. They're all over. So they're not distinct from what you're saying. They have maybe different focuses when you start them, but all of this working together is what helps to maintain damage to people's houses and so on. And we are in a low area, so.
We can discuss it later on, but I just wanted to make that point. And the other thing, once you see the priorities that came out, it kind of stimulates you to say, are we missing anything? And so that's kind of why I'm bringing some of this up, based upon the history we had before, the work that went into floodplain work. The second thing is that another key issues that we have as a watershed district is this shoreline restoration issue on Forest Lake. It's not a big problem. In fact, it's not even a problem for the other lakes, since they have pretty good shoreline scores. But our shoreline really needs a focused effort on that, and not only in just getting the people to do it, but also converting the city over as a partner in this whole thing too. So I think that should be listed here as a district-wide issue that we have to deal with in the future. The other question I had is we're delisting Comfort Lake, which is great. Do we expect to delist anybody else in 2027? That we should be listed as a priority to push to get that done?
Yes. Go ahead, Emily.
Well, the official list only comes out every 2 years. So the next delisting won't occur until 2028, but we are hopeful that we'll be able to delist at least one lake on that next round.
Submitted in 2027.
Okay, so I would suggest that we put that on the, because if we miss it by a month, then we gotta wait another 2 years. So I think it's a high priority that we want to make sure it gets done in the next 2-year period, so we don't have to wait another 2 years, because one of our claims is that we've got all 5 lakes done in 15 years, and if we keep pushing these things out 2 or 4 years at a time, we're gonna spread out our whole timeline. So
I thought we were already, all our lakes were slated for delisting.
well, they're slated for, but we have to work there and dot the
I mean,
i's.
slated like they're all reading below the mark.
So
Accurate or no?
we're close. School Lake is Little Comfort. Moody is on that, where it's on the watch list, so to speak. Shields Lake, there's something else going on. It was below,
Okay,
and then after, because we did that big project with the Forest Hills Golf Club, and then we did an alum treatment. So that, but there's something else still coming in that was not caught on the first.
so it's back up.
Well, there's something going on, so yes, we're proposing, as part of the Bush Foundation grant request, is to incorporate some additional diagnostic work around the district, along with some other entities as a demonstration, but so yeah, so we just like to have, we, on behalf of the board, feel that it would be appropriate to have a high confidence level that things are not gonna come off,
Come off and go back on?
well, return to some state that's either too close or, oscillating in and out, or just.
Yeah.
Or come out of the unimpaired status and back to an impaired status, so, because they're complex systems, right? Each lake is its own thing, and so
Just the way he said it, it sounded like we have 3 lakes or whatever, I'm just picking a number.
No.
Sound like there's a few lakes that aren't even off the list yet.
correct.
Oh, I thought they were all like, they weren't reading below the number.
You gotta have
Am I-
5 years of good data.
Oh, is that, so it's 5 years you have to be off? Like,
They like
not meet
10.
the standard?
They like 10, but.
Yeah, so
Oh,
you're dealing with Mother Nature,
Okay.
so you need to keep your eyes on her all the time. If you look away, like Shield Lake, boom, we got problems out there now.
Yeah,
So now we gotta work on it, make sure it gets back on schedule. So that's all I'm saying. This is also good. This is the priorities that came out of the last workshop. I didn't have a lot to offer stuff up because I wanted to see what everybody said.
Mhm.
So now I'm responding with things that I think maybe we overlooked and things that, this would be nice for the public to see. 5 or 6 priorities that are really high up that we're trying to look at and have that something we can fall back on and say, these are the things we're concerned about next year. So.
Well, we do that every year. That's the whole point of the budget. The priorities for that coming year. I just want to come back for a minute though, is the EOR report on the 10 lakes that were listed as impaired.
6 lakes,
Or-
yeah,
or-
6.
Oh, I thought it was 10. Wasn't it?
It's 6 lakes. It's
Okay.
6 lake thing, yeah.
All right, so we should reference that report because that's the engineering report that said we need to focus on 6 or
Sure.
10 or whatever the number was. And the reasons why. And there were some listed there that I didn't realize were a real problem for us. But Kelly, can you pull that up, that report from EOR? It's a number of years ago, but those are the lakes that we have been focusing on for this delisting effort. It's probably a good idea to just always have those in mind.
Yes, and it came out in 2010, the Six Lakes TMDL. So I think we can absolutely, pull that up if you'd like. I'd recommend we keep it high level and kind of get through the slide.
Yeah.
But if you want to,
I just wanna know those 6 lakes, the names. We know the 4 major ones, but what are the other 2?
Yeah.
I have them here.
Okay,
Comfort Lake, Little Comfort,
Sure.
School, Moody, Shields,
Well,
and Bone was the
Okay.
6th one.
okay.
And
Okay, I just wanted to get that off the table so we can come back to it later on if we have to. Sorry to interrupt, Emily.
No, that's okay. Good that we're all on the same page with the priorities, and we'll make sure the minutes list those 6 lakes. Okay, so getting into each of these priorities a little bit more, I want to talk about how the proposed draft budget is addressing these. So the first one, the board had indicated they want to have a balanced budget, or in other words, revenue over expenditures is equal to 0. And so that is what we have. So total revenue is 3.3 million, and then total expenses is 3.3 million. The board talked about wanting to minimize the levy increase. And so in order to balance the budget, we have a proposed levy increase of 9.0%, exactly 9%. And then there's the budget projection page in the budget packet. And that shows some future budget projection scenarios with pretty much minimal to no levy increases from 2028 to 2035. And that really hinges on kind of this very aggressive grant seeking program that we've had. And I'll highlight some of those grants, but being able to work within the confines of those grants enables us to balance the budget while minimizing the levy increases. One of the other priorities that was mentioned was paying off the debt that the district has accumulated through the no interest and low interest clean water partnership loans. And so that budget, there's the loan repayment series under 2,000. And that includes just regularly scheduled on-time payments, not paying them off any sooner, not making any late payments, obviously, but just paying them off on schedule. Note that that Loan E repayment schedule, that those numbers will be finalized once that loan is closed out. So those are subject to change a little bit. And then there was discussion about managing the district's fund balance and covering operating expenditures for the first 6 months of the year because we don't receive our levy settlement, our first levy settlement until the first week of July. And so we have the projections in the expense revenue recap and also in the budget projection tab. And I just have a short summary on the slide here. But if you look at the full one, it has our estimated fund balance at the end of 2026, potentially increasing a little bit if we can kind of stay on track with some of these budgets and leveraging some additional grants. And then keeping the fund balance flat with a balanced budget in 2027. So if we are able to get that fund balance to 1.3 million, it stays at 1.3 million as of the end of 2027. You kind of go into the budget projection from there. And what we added toward the bottom of that budget projection page was trying to look at those operating costs. And we categorize those as administration, the loan repayments, which half of which have to occur in the first 6 months, and programs. And so between these three items, that's inclusive of all staff wages and benefits, and just kind of the regularly anticipated costs that we would expect to see to continue operations of the district. And we can do month-by-month cash flow projections of those operating costs into 2027 as well. And so that's a bigger topic that we can get into, but kind of putting it there for now, keeping it high level. And then noting that when we're...
Let me ask a high level question. How do you propose to maintain a budget over 3 years with no increase? How are you going to accommodate raises and inflation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So 9% levy increase in 2027, and we have 3 to 4% increases built into those budget projections into the future years. And so still keeping the levy flat, it does draw into the fund balance a little bit. But when the total fund balance goes down, that doesn't necessarily mean that the general fund balance or the implementation fund balance are necessarily going down, because that service fund balance, that's designed to be negative. So if our fund balance is flat at the end of the year, we're still drawing down the debt service fund balance. That means one of the other fund balances is going up. So the fund balance is designed to go down over time because we're drawing on those savings to pay those loans. And that's helping us kind of keep things balanced into the future years because we had levied more than we needed for those loan repayments in the past and kind of built up a savings. And now little by little, we're drawing on that savings to repay those loans. And that's on the loan repayment projections page of the budget packet. And also another really key part of those budget projections is kind of holding ourselves to this idea that 100% of project and land acquisition costs are covered by grants. And so that means that we don't do anything project related. We don't do anything land acquisition related unless we have a grant in hand. And we've got a lot of irons in the fire right now to kind of get projects in the hopper and get things moving on that. So I'm actually hopeful that's a realistic goal. And then we had also set a pretty optimistic goal of 20% of program costs are going to be covered by grants and other revenues. And we think that's doable. And one of the big grants that we're getting, the Section 319 federal grant, is really helping to do that. But we're kind of diversifying our grant seeking portfolio, trying to bring in more and more grants for our programmatic kind of initiatives. And Shorelines, as Steve mentioned, is one of those that is a big priority statewide. And we're really hoping that Shoreline cost share program, our education and outreach, our cost share program in that program's category, we're really hoping that we can leverage a good chunk of outside grant funds to pay for that because it's such a high priority.
Well, I would disagree that this isn't a statewide issue. It is. It's promoted all the time, whether people are actually.
Yes, I meant it was.
Doing it. Yeah, that's maybe a clear representation. But I think everybody's trying to figure out how to do it. How to get people encouraged to understand the importance of it, especially in the metro. Okay, sorry about that.
No, absolutely. And just to clarify, I meant to say it is a statewide initiative. And so that's why we're hoping that we can leverage those grants.
Okay.
So that kind of goes into this fund balance conversation, but we're really hoping that if we keep up the pace with, these grants and everything that we're doing, and also just the past decisions with that service fund balance, we'll be able to potentially keep the levy flat. Now, that's not saying that's 100% going to be. We'll have to budget each year and look at actual grant revenues. But if we're able to stick to those estimates, then there's a good chance. So kind of continuing down the list of the board priorities that were mentioned at the last workshop, project signage was mentioned. And so we do have $10,000 in local funds budgeted for standard project signage as part of the education outreach program. And then in addition to that, we have been trying to write our ongoing and future grants in a way that project signage is included in the project grant. We haven't always done that in the past. And, we're going to rectify that and be doing that. So, for example, that heat iron enhanced sand filter, the way that the budget is shaking out with that, we should be able to cover the project signage element of that with those grant funds.
Yeah,
this is an example.
That's really good you're doing that. I've seen that in other districts. They accommodate for that type of signage in their grant work. So I'm good. It's good that we're doing that. We've been missing that at this moment.
Projects in the Comfort Lake Management District and Little Comfort Lake Management District were mentioned. And right now we're estimating just over $500,000 in earned grant revenues, so grant covered expenditures for projects benefiting those lakes. Plus a little bit of local funds budgeted. Let's maybe leverage some more grants, and I'll talk about that next when we get on the Comfort Lake management slide. We'll get into those budget breakouts, but lots in the hopper for Comfort Lake and Little Comfort Lake, and lots of grant funds coming in. And then Greenbelt and open space was mentioned, particularly with a desire to kind of learn more about what it is we're doing there. And so we are very excited to announce that we have our Lessard Sams grants, as I mentioned at the last meeting, have been approved by the legislature. And so we're still kind of working through some of the administration, but hoping in July we'll be able to get moving on those two grants. One's Bone Lake South, which we'll get to, and one is that Greenbelt and open space. And so, whatever the expenditure may be, it's going to be very much dependent on landowners' willingness to participate. But we know that we've got the Audubon Society property donation kind of in the works already. And so there will be some 2026 expenditures for like surveys and professional services. But we're kind of hoping that we'll really get this program up and running, maybe spend up to $150,000 on easements and acquisitions in that area. But regardless of what that number is, if it's $150,000, it could be up to $1 million. It is equally offset by grant revenues. So whatever that expenditure ends up being, it's going to be 100% grant covered. So it won't affect the fund balance equation. And then it was specifically mentioned at the last meeting to look for partnerships with Minnesota Land Trust and or the Trust for Public Land. And then Mike Kinney and Aiden and some other staff just recently had a good meeting with them. And there certainly is staff time to continue coordinating and working with them on that kind of partnership. And that'll be reflected in the staff work plan.
Can I ask a question about that? What's the difference between those two? You just met with them, didn't you, Mike?
Yes.
What's the difference?
Minnesota Land Trust is Minnesota focus. The Trust for Public Land is national.
Ah, okay, all right,
Or international, I guess.
okay.
So that's the one that was referenced in the article about Washington County.
Correct.
That's not a third option, I think about that. It's the same option.
Well, there's Washington County, there's the two land trusts, those are each individual ones, and they have different roles.
Right, but they had hired somebody at the federal level to come in and look at the whole Washington County, and I think it was this Trust for Public Land. I think it had the word federal on it, but not in the article.
Yeah, they're a national based.
I just don't wanna miss that opportunity, is what I'm saying. If Washington County used it, that's why I gave it the article to Emily, to make sure that there's not a third one out there that we should be aware of.
Yeah,
Okay,
right. I mean, there are other land trusts as well, just not operating within the district, so, and then the Charter Sam's of the Heritage Fund is another
a
option.
separate private one, yeah.
Well, it's the legacy money
Yeah.
through the legislature,
Okay,
which staff, we've done the legwork on, we did the application. We did the presentations to the committees at the Capitol, and then and received the funding, so that's how we did the acquisition for Bone Lake South, and then we have the upcoming phase two. Management part for Bone Lake South, restoration work, and then the Greenbelt phase one. Act from the acquisition side. So, but we anticipate more phases in that area as well.
so when you think about the property that's on Third Lake, that's up for sale now, you know, that's right next to our property.
Yeah,
I don't know whether that would be a good or a bad acquisition for us, for example, because there's a house on there that you're not gonna tear down. It's probably a $400,000 house, but. So those are the kinds of things that would help us. Cause there's not a lot of property on, and that's kind of a second tier property, since it's not on along the shoreline, right? So there isn't much water coming down from there, I wouldn't think. Maybe there is.
no, but I mean, but it's a great example, right? So, that property encompasses maybe half of the shoreline of, close to half of Cranberry Lake, which drains into Forest Lake. So,
So that would never be developed then, in other words. If they sold it, it could be developed up there then.
well, people can do things to shorelines, right?
Yeah.
They can remove a lot of vegetation, they can do a lot of harm, I'll just put it that way.
No, I know, right.
So just by coincidence, and I had a phone call this afternoon with the individual that assisted us from the real estate side. On the, because the property hasn't moved in some number of weeks.
Doesn't it flood there? I mean, heavy rain, that whole property would be wet, wouldn't it?
There's potential, so, I mean. So I did ask, so at the staff level, early in the week, I asked staff to do or some reach out to just with City of Forest Lake, hey, what would you guys think of it? Because there's different pieces, right? There's the piece, part of it extends south of North Shore Trail, that would be an easy add-on to us, but it's only like 3 or 4 acres. And then there's the other stuff that's, you know, where the channel is. You know, right in that vicinity, so you could maybe look at that, or you could just carve out the house and a few acres of that's upland and say, okay, you sell that, and then we do the rest of whatever it is, 25 or something acres. But
Or you rent the house out.
Or you
Yeah.
use it as an education, gathering spot?
yeah, it's the upland portion is limited to be different,
It would be.
turning around and things like that.
Okay,
So,
all right,
yeah,
yeah,
but
I didn't want to get us off true track. I just wanted to bring that up as.
But it's a great example though, I mean, because last year during the budget cycle, we were not talking about that. There's nothing in the budget that says, oh, in case that property comes for a sale, let's do that. There's a number of other, like the properties between Shields Lake and Forest Lake, there's a bunch of wetlands. So we could pursue, and I mean, that's my recommendation, we go through the DNR Conservation Partners Legacy Fund. But that's another source of funding that's available, so if anything under $500,000. And look to acquire either kind of permanent easements or full acquisition. To have better control of that area, because at some point, I think it would be beneficial, from a flood resiliency standpoint.
This is to build up to our 99 square acre feet.
No, I don't think so. This doesn't have any flood value. That's why I brought it up also, because Anderson's right to a certain extent. We have gone, from when we originally decided we were gonna do the floodplain work, and then everything else would fall kind of under on that. You know, you find a floodplain area and a green area, you preserve it. But we're just finding good areas that can be bought to preserve, because if we don't, somebody else is gonna buy them and develop them, maybe, I don't know. So that's why we're trying to
But
sort through
that
this.
doesn't, that doesn't go to help us to get to our 99. Because it's not, you're just trying to prevent building.
No, you're trying to
Yeah.
conserve the natural terrain, so it stays natural, yeah.
So the,
Well, it sounds that, I totally get the wetland discussion.
Mhm.
But what I hear you saying, maybe it's not what you're saying, but what I hear you saying is, if we buy it, then nobody can build on it, and then then it's locked in.
Right,
Well, I think you're missing the compromise, areas. So houses were built on unstable or things too close to the, to the water table, that kind of thing, you know, and so, it doesn't help to keep adding that damage, the potential damage to the lakes, when you're dealing like that, and this to me looks like it's right in the middle of a, lily area, I mean, and it's wetland, obviously was wetland beforehand. And, some of that's probably been built up, but anyway, I think we need a special session to just talk about all those things, tonight's the budget.
right. So
And-
let's keep-
And I
okay.
think, and I think these are ideas that we can put down for future. One point I just wanna reemphasize is that, doing this kind of work, it's best to go through the, DNR. They get almost 2/3 of the budget from the legacy money goes to the DNR. So they've got all kinds of projects or programs that we probably haven't even explored. But I'm glad we're doing, well, we started Sam, because that's a big chunk too. It goes out for everybody to protect land.
You look at that, the house was in 40 acres for $550,000. So that property is not, you know.
It's the house, not
It's
the,
the house.
not the property.
You can't build eight 5-acre lots on that for that kind of money, right? So she's right, something's wrong, something not wrong with it. It's wrong for development,
Mhm.
but it's right for preserving and conservation.
There's a overarching question that I have that somebody could answer, I'm sure. And that is, the work that we do makes, I would think, the wetlands better than original, for all practical purposes.
Well,
I
the
mean,
goal,
ideal, we're turning things into an ideal state.
Back to a natural state.
Well, not even naturals, wear and tear and whatever, we've got sways put in where it holds water on purpose. And it
Oh, yeah,
transitions to another, I mean, this is really ideal state,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I would think that
Well,
we're,
if it's contaminated, we clean it out and restore it to its
Mhm.
original state. If it's got a ditch through it, like Bixby Park,
yeah,
we get rid of the ditch and run the water through the wetland, so it has a dwell time of 8 months
You know,
instead of 8 minutes.
we've got filtration put in, we've accommodated, we've tried to plan for the speed at which the water gets from this end to the other end, and it goes through a level of filtration, and it goes through a
Right.
sand filter if we
Right.
need to, and I mean, do we not get some benefits from,
well,
like,
all of it,
when
yeah,
I
yeah.
say that, I mean, do we not get a plus,
Yes.
some sort of plus as in a,
Mhm.
well, we could have, just for example, 99 acre feet of pristine wetlands, or really, if we do our work on 99 square acre feet, we're really getting the benefits out of 1.5 or 105 square acre feet, because it's all running perfectly, right? I'm just wondering, is there a benefit? Like, if we take a look at Bone Lake and that
Mhm.
system, I'm sure that's gonna produce a better result than if you just blocked it off and said, let it run as it is. Or this is how, right? I mean, I'm just guessing. I just would need to understand that.
Right, so there's, Well, and that's the. Sort of the nuancing of it all. We haven't done a complete wetland inventory to say. They're not,
But we have.
no, it's an extremely arduous, and expensive undertaking to. Go out and individually score every single wetland, so, so we do it through, it gets done through the permitting process here, so, but that being said, then. Right, we through the H&H hydraulic and hydrology modeling. So, and through some other inventory work that's been completed, so some like in the Bone Lake Management District, we did pay the SWCD to. Look at all the wetlands there in terms of the potential for restoration and what they were to count, so. Cause there's a lot of. Degrees of. Human impact. Under the guise of land improvement of a century or more, right? So.
Sure.
And so some are easy to restore, quote unquote. And then you don't really do much to it, but you're getting them maybe the flood protection. Others you may more actively, like we're gonna do on Bold Lake South. We're gonna physically remove a whole bunch of manure. Right, and create some open water and so that's a more expensive entity, but you can also provide a ton of benefit. It has a lot of habitat benefit.
Yeah.
So there are stacked benefits from that perspective. I think that's what.
Yeah, and I don't mean to get it off track, I was wanting to ask that so I can better prioritize
Mhm. So,
budget stuff.
and to kind of finalize back to the start of the Cranberry, so that property that we have had experiences where, because there's a culvert in North Shore Trail, where that water level can rise, and then, so if then there's, there may be a scenario, we haven't done the modeling to look at it and say that, you know what, that house maybe shouldn't have ever been there.
Hmm.
That it always, that under this timeline, its frequency, it's gonna flood, right? The basement's gonna flood, or the foundation, or it's unstable, maybe it was all fill, just to create a spot to build a house. We don't know. But, some evaluation could look at it and then create a framework that says, okay, within the context of everything else that we're trying to do, yeah, to protect Forest Lake, we could put a control structure on the culvert, very simple. And then it says, when the water level gets this high, then it's gonna come in. Otherwise, the water will just remain in Cranberry, because that channel, it's fairly straight and it's pretty wide in certain areas. Chances are that was human impact, right? So, it just gets to that. Shields Lake, all the data suggests that those Shields Lake and Forest Lake were never connected historically. So, but they are now because it's ditched. So,
I was just gonna say that at the very beginning, it was the agricultural ditching that was creating, instead of that water coming from wherever, and holding in that wetland, it was now ditched and went to the next, body of water downstream. And that's what caused all the problems with that water. Forest Lake building up into a city. When we moved here, there was one gas station and one Hardee's on that strip on Broadway. That was it. And so that developed very quickly and everything was ditched. And so it just went downstream, to Comfort Lake and everything in Chisago. So it was a real problem. And our first CAC, the guiding principle was to return as much as you can to pre-development conditions, what Mike was talking about. Because, looking at old maps, this whole area was wetland, for God's sakes, and all these nice, beautiful lakes. So the other thing was make sure that we're not overdoing it, because that's where the core samples came in. What was this lake like before human impact? And so you don't want to go beyond that. And realistically, I think you were here when we were talking about this just a month or so ago, is that try to get as close as possible to that precondition, because that's when the lakes were sustainable and beautiful and didn't have all the problems that they have now. But it's hard to reach that 100%. You can have a goal, but everybody's realistic about that. And I think it reads better to the public that we want them to get to health. And we might not be able to get to that, that perfect mark, but it's good enough.
I would just, I like what you said there, but I would also say that, the whole definition of a SMART goal is attainable.
Of course.
And if it's not attainable, then it's probably not a good goal.
Well.
So if health,
Mhm,
determining what health looks like,
mhm.
if that's attainable, then it seems like that would be
Yeah.
just a better goal if you're gonna. Because then you can actually have success, otherwise it's never enough. And it's never good enough, and we always need more money, and we always need to do more.
No, I don't, I think you're misinterpreting what I said, but well, we can talk about this afterwards.
Yeah, it wasn't,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just mean if it's unattainable, then there's always, it's not you necessarily,
Where is
it could be anybody.
I'm saying it's unattainable. That's not what we're saying, but I understand what you're saying
Yeah.
as well, so we can talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Very good.
Great.
This is all part of the rich tapestry of our work and the complexity of our budget. So good background info.
I'm sorry, I slow everything down.
That's all
Right.
good. We're getting through the priorities. Just a couple more slides and then we can maybe kind of check in. So the last few that were mentioned at the last meeting, there was a desire to track the employee benefits and wages. And so that is definitely tracked internally. And, that's part of that fund balance conversation. And we are making sure that we have adequate budget to pay for operating costs. So we've got some cash flow projections we can pull up. We've got a separate breakout of employee benefits and wages. And that's a discussion point of how we want to code those as far as the accountants are concerned, and then how we can track them separately and do a roll up or expand the detail as we want. So we'll put a pin in that for now, but knowing that we have that information.
That's already separated out, though. We have those detailed line by line items. That's how we used to do budgeting. So, and then it was rolled up into that category, for the summary. So your pages, you don't have 10 pages to look through. But in the process of creating the budget, all of that had subcodes. All of the categories had subcodes where all of this detail was put. And I think those used to be part of our budget reports every year, or every month, I mean. At least they used to be. But anyway,
Yeah.
That's all I was talking about before, is there's only a couple that I thought were miscategorized. But the rest of it was fine. So do we have that detailed budget?
You do. Yep. We
I mean, here, do we have it? Does the board?
No.
No, okay. Well,
But we will pull it up as one of the bulleted slides of the.
okay, good.
Yep, we wanted to, we can get into those individual line items. We've got all that information. But just kind of getting through the high level priorities. We're also tracking grant versus levy spending. So there's two separate expense columns, which align with those estimated revenues. So there's also a revenues page. We've got our expense budget, we've got the estimated revenues, and then the expense revenue recap, which brings them together. And then kind of looking at the spending from year to year, the board just wanted to make sure that we were looking at that. So you've also got the 2025 audited year end. We've got our 2026 budget. We've got our 2026 estimated year end, which in some cases differs from the budget. And then our draft 2027 budget. So we've got 3 years of spending there, plus of course the budget projections out into the future on that separate page as well.
I think that's very well laid out and it's improved over last year too, in terms of understanding how this all fits together. So it's a good work.
Typical, to do that.
Hmm.
I said, this is a more typical presentation of a budget.
Right.
Maud uses, not Maud, but now it's Minnesota Watersheds uses that. A lot of businesses use that. And it gives you that picture, that 3-year picture. You were asking for this as well.
Yeah, right, no, that's great.
So we kind of wanted
Thank you
to
for
add. Yeah, thank you. We wanted to add some additional highlights. We got through the budget priorities, but how we're making this budget work, how we're able to get total revenues equal to total expenses, equal to 3.3 million without taking on any additional loans in 2027. That levy is about 72% of our revenues. And we're hoping that that number will go down as we secure more grants. We're not showing revenue from any grants that we aren't pretty certain about, haven't already been awarded, or are frequently recurring. And so just to kind of show you how that typically would go down, in 2025, the levy was 37% of total revenue, which we had the huge Bone Lake South land acquisition that was 100% grant covered. That was 2.4 million or so. So that kind of threw things off a little bit. But even in 2026, without a huge land acquisition, we still do have one big capital improvement project, the Heath Avenue Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. We still think that the levy will still only comprise just over half of our total revenue. So we're trying to bring in revenues from these other sources. And so basically, 2027, 26 and 27 are a really big year for the grants because we've been sort of planting the seeds over the last few years and applying for some of these bigger grants that have a very long lead time, like Lessard Sams. It's a year and a half between application and actually getting the funds. And so we're seeing a lot of those come through. And that's how we're able to have this draft budget where almost 100% of the project and the land acquisition costs are grant covered. So for the most part, if there's an expenditure, there is an equal and opposite revenue to counteract it. So the expense revenue recap for that project is zero. There's a couple exceptions. We do recommend budgeting a little bit of local funds. We have 20,000 in general project development. And that's the kind of thing that covers meetings, board directives, pre-project investigations, help seed future grant applications. The thing with the grants is it's very strict. You can only code your time to the grant if it falls within certain criteria. It has to be for that specific project within a specific time frame. And so if we have kind of miscellaneous requests for the engineers or for legal, kind of additional things that don't fall under a grant, that gets covered by local time or local costs. So we've got 20,000 for general project development. And then plus under programs, another 8,000 budgeted specifically for grant seeking assistance. So kind of that seed money to generate larger revenues coming in. And then that's kind of similar case for this $2,000 cash match. We are working, we have had a good partnership with Great River Greening. We had purchased the North Shore Trail Nature Area property just off Third Lake on Forest Lake there. And that was funded by a Conservation Partners Legacy Grant. Mike Kinney mentioned that program earlier. And that was for the acquisition. And then to do the restoration work that we've been doing out there, and we've got a walk and talk coming up where you can learn more. That was all funded through a LCCMR, Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund grant. It's kind of another one of those big state grants out there. And we actually didn't apply for that grant ourselves. We didn't touch any of the money ourselves, but it was all handled through Great River Greening. So we partnered with them and they handled the contracting and worked with us to organize that work. So we're realizing the benefits of that work without actually seeing that money on the books per se. And so we're working with them again. Oh, go ahead.
I was just say we provided a letter of support as part of, committee. Like, here's some things that we would like to do so that fits in with their mission. And so it's a good synergy. Thank you, everyone. Good description.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly it. We saw that letter of support a meeting or two ago. And so it would be kind of our staff time, that letter of support. And if Great River Greening were to get this grant from Lessard Sams Outdoor Heritage Fund, we could contribute some cash match And I think it would be awarded in the realm of $10,000, but spread over 5 years. And so we could budget $2,000 a year, but receive an estimated $200,000 worth of work to restore and enhance natural resources on district-owned properties. So you don't see a lot of that on the accounting and on the books, but those partnerships are helping us get work done and make improvements out on the landscape. Additionally, one last thing I wanted to note was, when it comes to leveraging additional grants and other revenues, we're looking for 100% for projects and land acquisition. The goal in the budget projection is for 20% of program costs to be covered by grants and other revenues. And this comes from a big variety. We've got a wide net kind of bringing in revenues here. So one of them is permitting. We just, at the end of last year, revised our fee schedule. We were kind of paying with levy funds for a lot of permit costs that really shouldn't have been covered by levy funds. And so by revising that fee schedule, we're able to recoup a lot more of those costs that are spent to review and enforce permits, regulatory permits out there. And so that is kind of helping the expense revenue balance. We're also really excited. This has been a long time coming. I feel like I have been talking about it a lot. The Section 319 Small Watersheds Focus federal grant is coming through. This is the one where we got approved for a 16-year period, 4 installments over those 16 years of 4 years each. And we're just coming up with our second installment here. So 2027 will be the first year. It'll be a 4-year period. And that grant, it's really special because, first of all, it is a federal grant, so it can be used to cover the match for a state grant, which is huge for us. It also is one of the few grants that actually allows monitoring. They specifically say you can't use it for diagnostic monitoring, but if it is monitoring to show the effectiveness of the projects being implemented, then it's eligible. So we've got some in that grant work plan, some money for in-lake effectiveness monitoring, as well as education, and the expenses and equipment and stuff for those things, as well as some of that grant money going towards staff time. So that's a big chunk that kind of helps balance as well.
How big is this grant in total, and how much do we get every 4 years?
It varies. They determine it, the amount every 4 years. It's just under 300,000 per cycle. So 300,000 times 4.
Okay, good.
That'll
While we're on this point, Emily, sorry to interrupt, but when we have benefits that we've achieved like this and good work that's been done, I think the savings on the permit was like around 90K a year. We should put that at the end of that bracket, like to show the savings, 90,000 or 105,000, 300K for the cycle, and so forth. The third one, you've got the LaSarge, you've got the 30K in there. Wherever we have a quantitative number, by showing it, just strengthens our position. I'm thinking when the CAC looks at this and they see those numbers, they recall, oh yeah, they did this and this and this. It shows the progress that we've made and the value of that progress that we've made. And then we just can't forget to sell each time we have an opportunity.
Even better, or maybe in addition to having it in the narrative, having a sheet
Well,
that says,
right.
and it's easy to read, and
that's what we did last year, but we had all the savings and
yeah,
extra costs, and
exactly.
but it's a nice selling point, and I just hate
Absolutely.
to see us not quantify it. When we're over budget, they sure remind us about it. So.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And then, the LaSarge Sam's After Heritage Fund grant for the Bone Lake South property. We had specifically set aside $30,000 of that grant budget to go toward district staff time to, operate the tractor and kind of do the restoration work ourselves. So some of that is going towards staff time, and then the rest of that grant will cover, consultant costs and contracted costs and materials and things like that.
That's on Bone Lake South?
Bone Lake South, yep.
Okay, all right. Our engineers are still overseeing all of that work, correct?
Yep.
Okay, good.
And that's covered by the grant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, significant.
Yeah,
Just like $250,000 or something like that for contracted services.
Mhm. Good.
So those are just a few highlights. As I kind of mentioned above, hoping that that levy percentage, the percentage of the levy over total revenues, we hope will go down as some of these seeds that we're planting bloom. We've got a lot of other grants that we're working on, and as those get awarded and as they come online, we can amend the budget and fold those in and kind of show how that affects our net position and our ability to do more work. Okay, so that's kind of the overview. The next few slides, as you've probably seen from reviewing the slides that we sent out, we get kind of more into detail with the Comfort Lake Management District and the Greenbelt and Open Space. Before we get into that, are there any kind of questions? We've kind of been doing questions as we go, but anything before we move on?
The only
Right.
thing I think, just as I mentioned before, anytime that you've got staff doing something, just make sure that it's, there's a statement, maybe in every page that has that, or one big one at the beginning, that our engineers are integral to all this work on a, oversight basis if they're not doing the work themselves. Because, we are mandated to have an engineer, a civil engineer on board and overseeing all of our work. And considered to be our superintendent of all of our projects. And so we want to make sure that when anybody reads anything like this, that staff is overseen by the engineers. All the work is still supervised by them. Okay?
Okay. So, as promised, here's some more detail. I've got a slide for each lake management district, but in terms of the work that is, specifically dedicated to certain lakes, we've got our AIS program, which is ongoing, and nothing too terribly new there. We've got watercraft inspections on Comfort Lake. Staff perform the AIS detection survey on Little Comfort Lake. We have a budget for delineations and treatment on Comfort Lake. And then some TBD for Comfort Lake carp management. We had talked about this earlier this year, and Manager Anderson has been kind of a supporter in this of seeking Lower St. Croix watershed-based implementation funding to do a carp movement study. And so our request at the convene meeting was denied, so we aren't getting a direct allocation, but we can still apply in the spring of 2027 for those funds. And I think that there's a good chance that we'll be able to fund that work with the WBIF grant. It still needs to go through kind of that whole process, but those funds should be in that grant budget and it's all eligible, and it should be a pretty straightforward process.
What's our goal with carp management?
They're killers of lakes. They love to root around on the bottom,
Oh.
so they destroy plants and then they make the water muddy and.
Release the
sediment
fertilizer,
release.
release the phosphorus.
Yeah,
So we want to get rid of them.
well, it's more than that. I mean, yeah,
They're invasive.
yeah.
So can I just ask a question is, does Comfort Lake, the exit of Comfort Lake have a fish barrier?
Mhm.
So why are we spending money on knowing about the carp when we're not gonna stop them from coming up river to St. Croix? We should put a fish barrier in there first, before
Well,
we do anything. The second point I wanna point out is that, we had that big storm last year.
Yeah.
And all that carp came up and I showed, where we had
Yep.
and I was sitting there for about 10 minutes and it was like carp back 30 feet, 3 feet deep in these.
Mhm.
I didn't see one small carp.
Mhm.
They were all this big and they were getting over the weir. About
They
1
come
a
up.
minute.
yeah,
So in
come up
about
the
2
same
hours, you can think how many carp got into our lake.
Yeah,
Because it was a blockage and the water was higher so they could get over it. But you need to have a protector before we spend any money on seeing where they go to spawn.
So yes, So we have reached out to DNR. Carlos Avery has a dam, but,
The big one in Stacy, you mean?
right,
Up
so
there, yeah.
that,
Mhm.
because otherwise, there's no other location, so, but DNR was not initially receptive, so, but we just, yeah, there's a lot to undertake in that whole process of what it would look like and,
But if we can't, why take the step and spend the money on something that you can't implement? Because you've got an unending supply of carp from the St. Croix.
well, what,
And even if they're not even going up to spawning, and we're just wasting the money because until we stop them from coming in.
right, so what we don't know is that the Stacy Dam, the Carlos Avery site there, is if there's a fish passage or not. So, because carp were intentionally moved, 100+ years ago as a food source, so, so what, so what we have here,
You're not from New York.
Right, so if they're not able to pass, then you would have from that area south, which would then go into Anoka County. It'd be a bigger undertaking, but
Yeah, okay, I didn't mean to discuss it, I just want to make a point of reference, so if
Yes.
this is a low priority item, it probably shouldn't be spending the money on it. So I just want to make that
Okay.
point initially.
Not- Who says it's low for the
These are the best.
Do it if you can't get any benefit.
Well, that's the point of doing a
This one.
plan, you know? I hope we get the DNR involved in that. You think that's a big issue. But I think it's just having part from our own boundaries that are moving into comfort through all kinds of methods. It's not just that Sunrise River. There's all kinds of tributaries that come over to us. Yeah, so
Maybe we could have the carp feed at the delisting.
I thought maybe we
There
were
we go.
taking a bus over there and then hopping out when it goes by over the bridge.
we can stomp on.
I don't think there's any tributary big enough to support them.
Well.
And
are
they
you
could
talking-
spawn, they could spawn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Championship.
But if they were spawning, I would have seen a lot smaller carp. That morning that I was there, and there was not a small carp.
Where were they from?
Oh, nice.
You're
Like
like
bait for years.
How do you know?
Sunrise River.
A contest for.
You were on the Sunrise?
No, it drains into the sun.
It's been very big.
So they come in. They had a pickup truck full of it. All right, sorry,
On Clear, you're on first site, aren't you?
no, I was talking about Lake One.
Okay, like, yeah, first site. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Emily,
Emily.
sorry.
You can go to the
Alright,
next page.
And not to be overlooked, there wasn't enough room on the next slide, but we are excited to be this year celebrating that Comfort Lake is going to be delisted. Obviously, when the EPA official list comes out, which might not be till fall because of federal delays, but that's kind of related to all this work that we're doing, and a lot of this work that we're going to get into on this next slide. So a lot of the grants that we've been applying for in the past years, some are ongoing right now, some are going to be coming online in the next few months, coming online next year. So flood resiliency, we had kind of created this line for the implementation of the flood resiliency action plan. And, implementation, it is multi-phase. It's not straight to construction. We've got a long road before we get to construction, but we do have a grant in hand where we can begin getting toward implementation with project modeling and concept design. And we're excited, we're going to be bringing a scope of work to the June 11th board meeting for EOR to be working on that. And so some kind of rough estimates, this work will begin in 2026, should be wrapped up in 2027, 100% grant funded. So however those expenses break out, the revenues will equally offset. And so no local spend here. We're meeting that 10% match through district staff time, and that's budgeted elsewhere.
Yeah, just to clarify, this is the work that we passed at the flood workshop we just had to authorize. So they're gonna come back and then prioritize or actually develop specific projects that we could take to the city then, if I recall.
Yep.
So there
Yep.
was I think there was 12 possible locations, and you're gonna go in and look at each of those? So there's a good chance that any projects that come out of this will be done up in the city area.
Yep.
Not down like Comfort Work, like
There's
Forest.
two in Wyoming that could be done.
Okay.
Right, the other eight were Forest.
Well, and keep in mind too that much of the developed portion of the city of Forest Lake drains to Comfort Lake, so it's in the Comfort Lake Management District.
No, I realize that, yeah, right, but, okay,
Yes, some might drain to Forest Lake, but a lot going to Comfort in the Sunrise River.
Well,
Um,
the priorities that we looked at before, are also in the city of Forest Lake. They're not so much near the lake itself, Forest Lake itself.
I wasn't saying it's for, I'm just saying that it's upstream from where you are, but it all flows down to you anyway,
Yes,
right?
yes.
In the Little Comfort Lake Management District, we have a grant in hand for School Lake agricultural BMPs. We've worked with the landowner out there to install some portion of the BMPs, a portion of the project. We hope to bring more information to a future meeting on this. Might need to pivot that project a little bit, maybe ask for a grant extension. And so Aiden's working on that, working with the landowner, and we're hoping to kind of get some things sorted out with that. But that's another one where their grant expenditures and staff time is covering the match. So, whatever expenditures we are able to do, whatever work we are able to get done is going to be offset by grant revenues. Obviously the big one, Heath Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. I think that's another one we are hoping to bring to next week's regular board meeting is the contract award. And so looking at a sizable year-end expense in 2026 for that, grant covered. This one, the grant was so sizable that we weren't able to cover 100% of the match with staff time, but we are able to use that land acquisition that we funded locally and financed with the Clean Water Partnership loan. And that should really help us cover the majority of that match. So I do think that in 2027, there won't be a need for any local spend on that project, aside from the district staff time, which will be tracked toward match. So construction this year, and then maybe some kind of additional project cleanup and site restoration and close out in 2027.
So this was 100% water quality improvement. I think it was 74 pounds at $1,000 a pound. Is that the one we're talking about?
I think 79 pounds. I thought it was less than $1,000 per pound, but
Well, it's around that.
yeah.
Okay. That was a good water quality project. Okay. I'm just trying to sort these out in terms of benefits as we go through here.
Yeah. Another kind of project development grant. We're trying to get as many grants as we can to fuel future projects. So there's no implementation under these grants, but it's paying for the EOR time that is necessary to help us identify cost-effective projects. So we have this grant ongoing, Sunrise River Headwaters Project Development. It's the Accelerated Implementation Grant, or AIG. And we expect that will continue into next year, probably wrap up before year end next year. Again, staff time is covering the match, the 10% match on that.
So again,
And
where is this going to be done? Just so because the headwaters to me is up by WD6 up in that area. Is that where we're going to be doing the diagnostic monitoring? Or are we
So
just
this
doing it
doesn't
around Comfort Lake?
really more in the named corridor where the Sunrise River, is named, not so much in JD6, but from the outlet of Forest Lake, as the Sunrise River flows into Comfort Lake, was the priority area. But we have made some other, we're working on some other grant applications for diagnostic monitoring elsewhere in the district. And we have some other conversations about, land conservation going on elsewhere in the district that we'll get into. So that's ongoing. That'll result in some projects. And kind of I do want to say to Jim's point earlier of let's say we do a wetland restoration project and it is optimized for water quality improvements. The water quality improvements might be the biggest benefit, or maybe habitat benefits might be the biggest benefit. But there is a chance, and we'll optimize as much as possible if we can add to the flood storage and get closer to that 99 acre feet goal, then we absolutely will. It's kind of part of this cost benefit equation. And we did another project in the Sunrise River area where just off Highway 61, where the primary goal was water quality improvement, but it got us something like 20 to 30 acre feet of additional storage. So when we talk about multiple benefits, that's what we're looking for, is check multiple boxes and achieve multiple goals.
Yeah, and that's the reason behind protecting as much natural land as you can and using that for multiple benefits, because it's not a project. You don't have to go and rebuild something or create a ditch or a holding pond. Let the wetland do its thing. One other thing I wanted to mention about wetlands, I brought this up years ago. There's articles are still there. As a matter of fact, they're getting more people looking at this, but wetlands are a carbon sink as well. So we don't just have the benefit of a living wetland for water storage. It's also helping our air. And I think we need to talk about that more. Sandiger has a master's degree in wetlands, right?
Component of it, yes.
Yeah, wetland habitat. I just think that's so important that a lot of what we do helps other parts of the ecosystem than what we are talking about, which is water all the time. So let's make sure we capture everything that we can for educating the public on the benefit of this work we're doing.
Yeah, good point. A few more projects in the Comfort Lake Management District. The East Comfort Pond, which we've been talking about, we got this green infrastructure grant for it. Working on project development right now, possibly construction in 2027. And another one where we do believe that the staff time should be able to cover all of the match. And this is one of those ones, we'll see how the project feasibility goes, what the cost estimates end up being, what the construction bids end up being. If this project is over budget and that grant doesn't fully cover it, that is one where that Section 319 grant could come in and kind of help cover the difference. It would be eligible for that. So kind of a backup plan for this project for that one too.
Mike, is this a water quality project, or is it a storage project or a green space project? What are the benefits of these? I don't remember.
Yeah,
this
so
at all.
it's, yeah, it was on the smaller part, it's really a stormwater, it's kind of one of those, it's a little bit of an uniform, but an odd piece, but it is designed to be, it'll have a water quality focus on it. It'll be, I think, somewhat de minimis in terms of additional capacity for flood storage. But it's actually intended to be a stormwater focused project, which is normally something that doesn't get funded.
In the middle of a wetland, though. That whole bay is a wetland.
So it's not around a facility, it's just kind of out in the middle of nowhere then.
It's also private property.
Is this not part of that septic tank issue that we were dealing with?
No.
No, that's separate, right?
No.
There was when there was the township, there was a.
Okay, so what's the phosphorus removal out of this center, or is it just gonna be water storage?
We're estimating 2 to 4 pounds per year. So kind of on the lower end, but we've hit a lot of the larger projects, the low hanging fruit already. This one, it was on private property and the landowner was willing to work with us, which kind of goes a long way with being able to implement a project.
And it's really putting into place a structure that should have been there for the roadway that wasn't done at the time when prior to rules.
Okay.
Yeah, good point. I kind of mentioned land management on tax forfeit properties. That was that Great River Greening letter of support. So we'll see if that comes through. They, that Lassard Sam's, it's kind of a long process. So I would recommend we kind of keep that cash match in the budget. And if they aren't selected for funding, it can be shifted elsewhere or used on something else. But hopefully that grant comes through and that leverage into using more grant funds in partnership with Great River Greening. And then finally, Greenbelt and Open Space, Phase 1 is the title of our Lassard Sam's grant. And so looking at easements and acquisitions, so fully funded by the grant, we had proposed some staff time as the leverage. With Lassard Sam's, there's no minimum match, but if you propose some leverage funds, it makes your grant application more competitive. And so the big one we're getting primed and ready to go that falls right in there is that Shallow Pond Audubon property donation that really comprises the majority, but not entirety, of the Shallow Pond wetland complex. And so even if it's a donation of the property, even if we're not paying for the fee title itself, there's a lot of due diligence that needs to be done, professional services, surveys, things like that. And so once we have that grant in hand, that can be those sorts of costs and services can be covered by the grant. So that'll be happening yet this year.
Okay, it will be happening? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, and we should be actually having a scope of work for the Phase 1 environmental site assessment coming to you very soon.
When can we make that announcement? Do we have to wait until all this work is done? Or can we make the announcement and say we're investigating?
I guess we can, it's been in public record already, so.
Oh, it is?
Well.
Has it been transferred?
No, I'm talking about just
Oh, okay, here.
discussion here.
Discussion, yeah,
Right, those parts.
yeah.
And so, but I mean, right now it's, it's in there's a, per our watershed management plan requirements, a number of steps that need to occur.
Mhm.
But we're gonna wait until after July 1st, so then all the expenses can be covered by the grant.
I see, all right.
So, but there will be no reason to hesitate. They're anxious to turn it over.
Mhm.
And
Well, can we put that as part of our celebration for delisting?
I guess. So. I don't know, I'm normally one to, count my checks for the edge, but so.
That's a pretty solid deal, I think.
Yeah.
He doesn't want it.
I think Emily mentioned that the 25,000 will be used to cover the cost to kind of absorb the Audubon. And what about the 150,000 for next year? What is that for? And is it just going to be only for the Comfort Lake Management District, or can that be used across the entire watershed district?
What?
Well, it'll be mostly within
The
the,
150,000.
Okay,
mostly within the Sunrise corridor, and so the Comfort Lake, back anywhere from. The western part of.
So what do you mean by an easement and acquisition? Because it has nothing to do with Shallow Pond, right? Because we're gonna own that, so that's not an issue.
Correct.
So
That would
where are the
be-
easements and options that are there that aren't anywhere else in the watershed?
So they'll be part of the work that we'll want to do with the OR in terms of location of, it'll go hand in hand with the flood resiliency. We would like to overlap them, stack the benefits to whatever extent possible. So if there are property owners, and we know of one on the connected to the district's property currently that would like to sell their wetland. Is there, it's not any of any value to that individual that expressed interest, so and they're
So you're trying to buy something that fits into something we already own.
correct, yeah,
Okay.
I mean, and then another, I've talked to another property owner in that corridor. They're interested in the easement, so they would want to maintain control, but you know, the district could acquire an easement over it, so it can't be altered or some other thing.
Mhm.
It would also give us the right, if we were interested in some future phase of recreating some of the meandering that was historically there. So, which then does, just like the Dixie Park, it allows more water to get out into the wetland component versus the channelized.
For filtering and groundwater,
Multi
regenerate,
benefits, yeah.
all those things. Yeah, and then it slows down, of course, the velocity and the volume coming to Comfort. But that project that you're talking about is in the Sunrise Corridor, so it's really important for the Sunrise River too. It's
And
not-
there are some within the city of Forest Lake boundaries too that
Mhm,
could be approached.
yeah.
Okay. Cause I'm thinking of, you look something like the Pizza Pub, that peninsula coming in, we're looking at trying to get access to that, right? So that would be one, if we could add a chance to get it, it's something that would have been a value going after probably, because we could have preserved and restored the peninsula.
Right, well, we would look to do that through an existing program that we would have access to
Okay.
separately and in addition to this.
My only point is that if we're all spending time looking in the existing corridor, nobody else is looking anywhere else, so nothing else is gonna get done or
Oh,
discovered.
we have our list.
So that's why I'd like to see the list later, that's my next page question. So I'm just trying to get you set up for it. Because this is a very balanced program, all to Comfort Lake, which is fine, because there's a lot to be done there.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, it's
Yeah.
got 80% of the budget.
We moved you, don't forget, we removed you from the end of our first 20-year plan, you meaning Forest Lake. And the city, the lake, not the city, which is really the name in our name is for the
Oh,
city. But here's the deal, Forest Lake was not to be done until the end of that 20-year project because we weren't impaired. And the DNR, it was Bowser, I think, that changed their perspective, maybe it's MPCA even. That said that we should attack or go after improvements to lakes that are almost at that level, but not quite there.
Nearly and barely.
Yeah, and so that was the flip to putting you, actually, not you, but putting Forest Lake, the lake, ahead of where it was originally planned.
Right, I think the other thing you had a lot to do with when I came on board, in fact, one of the reasons I came on board was to point out to the board that none of the taxpayer money that's from Forest Lake that's funding the entire watershed is being spent on the people that are paying the money.
And
So that
Forest
had a
Lake,
big reason to push it up.
well, I don't know about that, but.
Oh, yes.
Forest Lake is the 90% polluter. So
That's the other reason.
Forest Lake, Comfort Lake, the Sunrise River was not damaged until the buildup of the city of Forest
No,
Lake.
I know that, and
Well,
that's a good reason to take care of it.
Exactly. So there was an urgency in doing that. And thank God we did the Bixby project because that was.
Major one.
Well, think of how much water has been held in Bixby Park. That's not going down to the Sunrise and eventually to Comfort. Comfort's just this little teeny tiny lake,
Right. I know,
Madam President, managers, just in reality, projects anywhere in the district, help multiple lakes.
Mhm.
The Moody Lake project greatly helped Baldwin become
Oh, yeah.
and then which then drains all the way down to Comfort Lake. So through that.
But
system.
there was no controversy on that. I'm just trying to
Correct.
say that this is the natural step that we decided to take. And it was planned from the very first project
right. I
that
know.
not project, but the big reports that we did early on. To divide the,
Yeah, work,
boundary
before the
and
sports,
for-
work down the dance,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And the benefit, of course, you're already getting off the list. And you're just still now doing the local projects, so
Mhm.
you're gonna go from 30 down to 22
yeah, well,
or 20,
remember
So, which is a
remember,
great thing down.
it is, but remember the drought.
And worth the wait.
The 3 to 4 year drought that we went through, Comfort was down at the 1920 rate for phosphorus.
Right.
So that's its intended, or that's its
No,
original position, and that's the way it
We can
looked
get there, we
when
should
we
do it.
moved there in the late 80s, so it's coming back. It's a terrible thing to watch a lake die. It happens so fast.
We were very close.
Yeah, I know.
In fact, had we not done it, we would have been impaired by now.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Want to go on?
Yes, I think we've answered those questions.
Yeah, very well. So the Greenbelt and Open Space Initiative, got the grant forthcoming. This is kind of the focus area that we had applied for in the grant. And like Meg mentioned, there's some areas kind of near our tax forfeit properties. There's the big Audubon property, but the Audubon only covers a portion of Shallow Pond. And so there's a bunch of like little easements and or acquisitions or things that, would be necessary to do around that wetland complex if we wanted to use that as a big flood storage wetland complex. So this has been on the radar, like Jackie said, ever since that Sunrise flowage report. But there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. You can't just do the project immediately. You're going to have to get agreements from surrounding landowners. So that'll be a big piece of it.
That's interesting, that you point that out, because I did not know that Shallow Pond property, was actually owned privately by people near that.
Probably half.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap with like a bunch of little parcels here and there, people whose backyards are basically going into the wetland. So
So is that a new grant, the 1467?
yep.
As of
that's-
July 1st, right, yeah, it'll be a new.
And that'll be doing the iron sand filter or something else?
Sorry, that's a separate.
That's a separate one.
Another 1.5.
Wow, for that area.
Right.
Well. Wow.
And so that's our focus area, but there are, and I've got some slides of the district's other priority areas district-wide. And like Mike has mentioned, there are other grant programs that are kind of a faster turnaround. So if there is an opportunity that arises outside of this priority area, we can go to those other grant programs and have a few months turnaround time and maybe be able to fund an acquisition or an easement with that other program. There's other options out there. And so doing this in phases, we're calling it phase 1. Phase 2 and beyond, after we get a little bit of momentum going on phase 1, can be, additional grants to do restoration and enhancement within this area, such as Shallow Pond would be a really great one if we could, as well as getting additional grants to obtain easements and acquisitions in other priority areas throughout the district. And so that kind of brings me to this figure 2.5 from our 10-year watershed management plan. We've had these priority areas on our radar for a while now. And just as a reminder of how we came up with these, during the 10-year plan update process, EOR went through a bunch of GIS layers and they looked at groundwater sensitivity, lake phosphorus sensitivity, groundwater dependent natural resources, a bunch of different layers of information that we have available to us, overlapped those and found where are the areas that are really rich in natural resources that can be restored. And so they developed these polygons for us. So we're talking about the Sunrise River Corridor, kind of so named in the plan here and shown in our LaSarge SAMS grant. We've also got the JD6 corridor where we've done some projects already. And then highlighting also the Bone Lake South corridor. We kind of knew this area was a priority for a while. And so when that opportunity for the land acquisition came up, it was great because we already knew there was a bunch of natural resources in that area. And so it would be a great kind of, it's kind of serving as a great site or pilot site for the green belt and open space concept. It's kind of out front. We've done a lot of prioritization elsewhere in the district, but that opportunity is really fast-tracked to Bone Lake Management District because it's kind of part of this green belt and it can connect some other high priority areas that the county has identified outside our district. And it also has the potential to provide a lot of flood storage and get us toward that 99 acre feet goal.
Or more. I mean, we're actually going to be more, I think. I just have to say, I think the Bone Lake Association, part of its membership is that you pray a lot for things like this to happen. Isn't that right, Manager Blacking? I mean, it was just so unexpected and yet such a blessing.
Well, Santa Claus lives up there.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right, on July 4th. Can
He
I ask?
vacations, he vacations on Bowman.
Hey,
He spends his summers here, yes, but in the winter, he's at his workshop, he's busy.
Can you go back to the other slide for just a minute? Emily? Okay, this map with the other map at some, maybe at our 17th celebration party, this really shows, you don't see that detail of all the water. All that blue is water. And when you look at it in this type of scale and this type of focus, it really shows you how much water there is, and there's hardly anything left for careful, development when you look at something like that. So,
This is, I mean, it's not necessarily standing water though, right?
no, but it's, well, yeah, I mean.
It's like
can't-
if this got flooded, this is
No,
where
I
the
don't
water
think
would
so.
go.
I think this is one of those, Google Earth, ones where you can actually show what the,
It's a wetland layer
yeah,
over.
Yeah, the
That's what I
National
meant.
Wetland Inventory.
yeah, you can see the standing water, or it's a wetland, it's not a lake, it's not classified as that
Okay.
yet.
Like shallow pond, there's very little open water
Yeah,
currently.
yeah, and then you can see,
Historical map showed it to be open water.
Sure.
and then you could show, it's kind of like a peninsula, but not really, because it's got land connections on the north and south, but you can see that water in that area to the right by the freeway. And there's homes that are built in there, but it is, there's a lot of it that's wet. And natural wetlands, high class wetlands. Anyway, my point is that it shows what Mike was talking about, what you were mentioning, Emily, about having so much water in our 49 square acres. And so it just brings that to life for people. So you're not looking at a flat map,
Yeah,
one dimensional
Yeah.
map. Okay,
yeah, we do have a wetlands map in that presentation, so that's a good point.
yeah, good. All right,
Yeah, on that
And we
last
say
point,
water,
before we get off that, I'd like to see us put some other priorities for some of the other priority areas. We've got the W6. My glasses corridor, and we've also got the, well, they're all in yellow on the next chart. So basically, if we could get some of the opportunities in some of those areas, so we know what they are, then we can maybe begin to focus on some of those also as the time permits.
didn't we have a big JD6? Didn't we have a big project there? There's more, or is that project dying, or what?
Well, I'm talking about easements and that.
Okay, mhm,
Yeah,
Yeah, we did a
number point
project
number 2 up there, they're saying,
On
there's
the
a-
Western Branch,
okay,
you'll be happy to know that Administrator Kinney is coordinating with outside partners. And I hope to bring some good news about 2 big projects. That,
okay,
because frankly, we don't need to be necessarily principally involved with certain activities, so we can be supportive partner to some of these, so.
okay,
it's good to know what's in the hopper, because when you have such a focus we've got right now on Shallow Pond, and we've done all this work to get these other areas defined. Constituents are gonna question a little bit, why there's nothing else happening in some of the other areas. So if we have a list,
yeah.
a balanced list,
Well,
We heard
we've
this,
been through that.
we heard the same thing about why is all the work, why are we paying for all that work in Forest Lake, and,
Right,
yeah,
I know. I
so-
know.
so,
The 2 big projects we did.
yeah. You gotta understand how.
so yes, I've had 2 meetings within the last 2 weeks, one was today with. Major landowner and another entity as far as potential, they're looking to. Do something with. Like a Bone Lake South equivalent,
Hmm.
so,
And we've got that property next to the school owned by Muskie,
correct,
so,
that's still on my list, yeah.
Mhm.
so he may wanna sell that and put it in his, he's got his own little, fund now, like Halbert,
Yeah,
and he's been
yeah, we
growing
talked
that.
about that, yeah, we need to, I'd like to revisit.
So anyway,
Yeah, just,
okay,
we were on track with that one, we did quite a bit of legwork, but then, there were some things going on with the school district, and then they kind of walked away from it.
Kiawatin is
Adjacent to the middle school, it'd be a great property. for the
right,
school.
I know. Kiawatin is Lake Kiawatin is a big feeder. The whole north shore or west side of the lake is fed by springs out of those rocks, and it comes to Lake Kiawatin.
Mhm.
So if the Lake Kiawatin goes down, gets troubled, our feeding system is gonna be coming in, not as clean as it should be. So. And we don't do much for Kiawatin because it's so perfect that nobody wants to touch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right, but we do need to focus on
So some big contractor buys the northern half of it, starts building homes out there.
the southern half where there's a lot of the infiltration that feeds it, because it's a groundwater fed lake,
Right,
so.
okay.
That's part of the Met Council though, bringing services out to that area, correct? It's not septic and well,
It is.
it's septic and well? Like, oh, wow. That's not good. You don't want development in there, not till you have infrastructure.
I'm saying that it happened overnight, and once it's happened, you can't undo it. They own the
We
land.
need to talk to the city, Forest Lake.
Yeah, that's gonna help us a lot.
A quick point of clarification on the National Wetland Inventory before we go. It's to equate NWI extent with standing water, but we often see there's something that shows up in the National Wetland Inventory, but it might not have standing water. And in dry years, you might not even realize it's a wetland. People have farmed over it. People have ditched through it. People have their backyards there. So it looks like it's a lot of water, but a lot of people don't realize that it's just a wetland that's might be in a dry state.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, but with the blue, it indicates that's what it is, though, it's a wetland.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
People are gonna think they live in a floodplain
Yeah.
when they see that.
A lot of folks live on the edges of these wetlands, so
I
it's a
know.
big point of conversation. So we kind of went over the overlapping layers of natural resources that kind of gave us these priority areas in the plan. And it makes sense that a lot of these areas, we've already been doing work in there. We've done some projects because it's a water quality area or there's restorable wetlands. As Mike mentioned, there's some conservation acquisition and easement talk that's kind of going on for these high value natural resources that we've already kind of known about. So it's good to see things are happening. And so if we take this priority areas map that we had created back in 2020, 2021, when we were updating our 10-year plan, we can compare this to the flood hazard map, which we've made in recent years, which when it's the flood hazard, it's just where flooding occurs, plus the flood vulnerability map, which we created custom for ourselves, and EOR created this custom ranking and everything for us that is where the flooding occurs, plus the presence of people and infrastructure and natural resources that might be restored or protected or utilized. So it's not that the red areas have the worst flooding, it's that the red areas have flooding and they also have people, and they also might have opportunities for restorable wetlands or other kind of projects that could achieve multiple benefits like habitat, water quality. So it's kind of there's a lot of data that is getting overlapped and compared and sorted and scored in order to get us this map. And again, kind of similar to the priority areas map, you're seeing the patterns here, some orange areas, some red areas, and it's good. We're seeing a lot of the work that we have in the works right now, these grants that we are getting to come online, these partnerships that we're talking about, they are occurring in these areas. And so we're kind of constantly looking at this prioritization, targeting, measurability, guiding this work that we're doing.
Just to mention, for Jim's benefit, if you look at that center, that red thing there, you got the Comfort Lake area all red going up into town.
Which one are we looking at?
The center one right here, yeah. And you got the red one up,
Right?
the center. Yeah, it's the left side of the center chart. All that red is.
Okay,
So that's a Comfort Lake corridor that we're talking about. The other second priority one was the red down below Lake One there, which is the water, which is called the WD6 sector, right? There's a lot of opportunity for green space in there and wetlands to be all developed and bought. So you could actually take a canoe and go all the way down through the lakes and then up the stream and down into that area. Ideally, if you wanted to make a trail out of it, that kind of, although we're not in the trail business, that's the city's responsibility. We decided that, but those two fit together probably better than anything else we have as far as a continuous green space area that we can
Right,
talk about. And it
sunrise.
starts up with a shallow pond area and all.
Yeah, well, actually the sunrise coming in from.
Right.
60.
So just so you're better, that's how there's 5 or 6 areas, but those ones were kind of put together by EOR as a hypothesis to develop. Because they probably can't build in there too much, is what we're saying. Okay, sorry. Emily, go back to your presentation.
Yeah, all good. And I think just kind of the transitional note is the Bone Lake South, which we've been talking about, that I've been identified as having high value natural resources, having some flooding that might occur there, and some possibilities for projects. And so that brings us to our overview of the Bone Lake Management District. Kind of going in account in sequential order of the account codes. Touching on the AIS and watercraft inspections first, we have budget and lots of partnerships for the Bone Lake watercraft inspections. Kind of similar as we noted for Comfort Lake, there's partnerships and other funding noted over there. Some surveys and treatments budgeted for Moody Lake and Bone Lake, AIS management, Curly Leaf, Pondweed, and the like. And then when we get into kind of our wetlands category, we have an item in our plan for wetland enhancements. And this Bone Lake South property, the wetland enhancement, we're doing a lot of different work out there, but the wetland restoration and enhancement is really the centerpiece of it. And so there is, a lot that goes into this 2026 estimated year-end expense. We have had overlapping grants for this one too. We got 2 grants for the acquisition. One was Lessard Sams, which is spent and closed out. One is Conservation Partners Legacy, which we partially spent to cover up the remaining balance that was needed for the acquisition. But then there was a little bit left over from that. And so we used those leftover grant funds to cover some of our professional services, which are in the past. And then now for some of the fencing and site improvements that we're doing yet this year. Some of this is occurring in the first half of the year under that Conservation Partners Legacy grant. And then we're going to just kind of keep the momentum rolling in July once the new Lessard Sams grant comes through to be able to kind of finish up the fencing and start doing the project feasibility and design and everything for the wetland restorations and all that stuff.
Emily,
Yes.
could you go back to the previous slide showing the maps?
Mm-hmm.
And the priority areas map, if you look at the Bone Lake South wetland on that map, directly to the west of that is land that does not include our watershed district. But you can see it's right across the street from the Bone Lake South property. And that's where the Martin Marietta gravel pit is located. And I brought this up before, but I think it needs to be on our radars. That can greatly impact our watershed district because they are digging well below the bottom of Bone Lake, excavating soils and materials, and they're using millions of gallons of water that has been approved by the DNR to treat the different compounds they are developing and selling to local contractors for building roads and et cetera. So I just want us to be aware of what's going on there and how that can eventually impact our watershed district.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good information.
What's the
Can
watershed?
you point that out? Can you use your pointer? Okay, how about on the map on the right, down flood vulnerability map?
That'd be right down here.
Okay. And Bone Lake is obviously just, yeah,
Is that Rice Creek?
northeast of that,
Yeah,
no,
it's gotta be the
Rice
light,
Creek watershed?
the light spot.
Big Marine.
Big Marine, yeah.
There's Carnelian Marine, and it's another feature activity that we don't have funded, but the original boundaries done decades ago were done not with LiDAR, which is, light detection and
Yeah.
ranging, and so like I said, we can get good, elevations, but rather the old USGS,
Mm.
which were 10-foot intervals, so, so all the indication is that that German Lake there, that area would drain in, west into Forest Lake, but then a portion of it goes east, so you can see. So it's a known issue. We've had conversations with Carmar about it, but
Is there a chance that our boundaries get changed at some point?
yes, we've done this already. It's a couple, we both with Rice Creek, we went through a boundary change, very,
Okay.
very detailed process.
Wow.
And then we did one with the Lake Fueling District for Stock. So.
Yeah, good to know.
You think they're amenable to that kind of discussion? Carnelian Marine?
Yes, but it just, both for both entities. Nobody has the excess budget capacity to do the level of engineering work, to do this.
Yeah, you have to prove some kind of damage is happening. So,
No, you don't.
I mean,
You just-
if the boundary change, you still gotta go after them if they're causing some kind of damage, it's hard to prove that.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, I know.
But even if it, whether. There could be an argument whether it's in the district or not, just because of the way groundwater, moves. But. The other is to engage. Currently Marine in that particular thing and then say it's impacting their groundwater and ours,
Mm-hmm.
but.
Army Corps, they're calling the Army Corps.
Yeah, well, but the thing is that it was. As Manager Baki noted, it's been approved by the DNR. It was that a couple of years ago or so, 3 years ago, I can't remember how long ago.
Yeah, it was recently, Mike. I had read something about they increased the amount of water that they could use. So I'm having my well water tested soon and I'll report back to you all what that report's gonna tell us. But, I can't but question the impact. I mean, if you've ever been by that, Martin Marietta is huge. They're a huge company. They're just not a local gravel pit here. I mean, to go up against a company like that, I don't know. That's a tough battle. Money.
We should follow up with the DNR first, I think.
That would be my point too, President Anderson, is why is the DNR approving all these millions of gallons of water that they're using treating these compounds, which has to have some kind of environmental impact.
Yeah, and they've got all the data, so it'd be easy.
I did go on a tour of Martin Marietta a couple of years ago with Patty Ray, another resident on Bone Lake, because we were concerned. They took us on a tour of the facility and showed us what they were doing and how the water was being purified and put back without any impact. And then we asked for some hard data that they could share with us, and we never received anything.
They have to report that to the state, so I think working with the agency would be better.
I agree.
Yep. Okay, well, that should be on the list that Steve's creating.
All right, taking notes. All right, and then we also mentioned earlier, we are seeking a grant to hopefully fund some additional sequential diagnostic assessments and monitoring throughout the district for various water bodies and kind of taking it broad level to the state. This has been a big project, passion project for Mike Kinney. Mike, would you want to talk about that at all from your perspective?
No, I think you've heard enough.
I'll put a dime in it and then we can crank it.
Right, yeah, so it's, Well, yeah, I mean, one of them is, we had a great meeting earlier today. Thank you, Emily, for coordinating that with representative from the foundation and to help further refine it along with a couple of the other watershed representatives. And we got some great feedback about looking to incorporate like what would some additional phases basically be, with that level of work, but also incorporating more into the grant request to then do the outreach, get out and communicate a message. So I look forward to like, oh, I could put some money in for my time and go out and
Mhm.
what I've been doing for free for how many years?
Yeah.
And get paid to do it, or at least
Mhm.
using the district's dollars for it rather,
Mhm.
but yes, no. Yeah, we're excited to get that moving forward and then it hopefully awarded sometime in next year.
Well, Bush, the thing that struck me when I read their syllabus, basically for getting one of their grants, it was all about innovation. And they wanted to have new ideas that others could be taught to use that would help whatever your goal is. And,
Seems the office might have frozen, or maybe it's me. Dave, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Emily, but I do not hear the rest of the folks.
Okay, maybe the office internet is having a moment. Give them a sec.
I think we lost them.
Yes. Okay. I'm gonna just pause the recording. We don't have to, I don't think, record this whole downtime. I'm sure they're going to be rejoining. It defaulted to me as the host, so I should be able to let them in. We'll pick back up. Are you still up at your cabin?
Pardon me?
Are you still up at your cabin, or
No,
did you?
no, I'm back at home. I've been having trouble connecting up there. Last year I had no problems whatsoever, but this year something has changed. And so my hotspot from my cell phone won't connect with the laptop. So I guess I'm just going to have to rethink the way I connect with the meetings. Maybe go to the local library in Cook, Minnesota, where they have internet.
You could. Well,
Yeah.
it seems that that's what the people at the office might need to do. Brad just said Wi-Fi is down.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
Tori is working to hotspot. So let's hope Tori's hotspot works.
oh, wow. I do have to leave at 8 o'clock, so just so you're aware,
Okay.
I'm not around after 8. That's
Okay. I was wanting to, before we were done, schedule the next meeting. I'm looking at
okay.
maybe June 15th for budget workshop number 3.
I'm seeing pictures are coming up, so maybe they're reconnecting.
Okay. Yeah, let's see. I'll make folks co-host. But yeah, before you go, I'm hoping to confirm June 15th for the next budget workshop.
Let me grab my calendar.
Okay.
Military.
Mhm.
We
Well-
should be back.
I hear voices.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
We
You know
just
what? I
sold
thought,
off more to Bone Lake while you were gone. Too bad you missed the boat.
Yeah, meeting's over again, Dave.
Darn. I didn't
I'm
even
in
get.
trouble because we haven't got to Forest Lake yet, though.
Mhm.
It was unanimous.
Yeah, good.
I just want to compliment Bone Lake and also Comfort Lake, because your lake associations, you guys have gotten a lot more partners going along, like we have with Forest Lake. So we all now three lake associations have people involved in the community,
Yeah.
giving money, and that really tells a nice story for helping us get more grants. So that's great work, both of you.
I just wanted to say that, with the kind of immersion that we have with grants, you have to be working ahead. You know, you can't. Emily's mentioned a couple of times about how long some of these grants take. And, you know, that was, clarion call from the beginning when grants became available. I mean, imagine going for 8 years with just this little bit of money that you could get every year. And then finally we get into, the metro zone and you can budget for actually what you need. But then that light that came on with the legacy fund is amazing. It's just amazing. And you have to be thinking, as she reiterated several times, these grants aren't overnight. You know, you have to be thinking ahead and you have to have your plan so that you can move into that next area, which might not happen for 2 years, but you know, there's a number of plans. I think we spent 6 years in doing the work for Forest Lake, and then probably about the same amount of time that you'll spend in Comfort with Bone, maybe about 3 to 4 years. But we had these plans all laid out. So it's not like you're having to do the work and, you know, put that scenery together. You've got it already in the 10-year plan. And originally we had a 20-year plan when we started out. So it's all built on that data, that information that we've collected and altered as we needed to because of changes over that kind of time. But our process I've always been very proud of.
Good points. Dave had informed me that he has to leave at 8 o'clock. I know we're kind of getting close to our 2 hour mark. Before we go, I wanted to confirm the date for budget workshop number 3 and
Yeah,
confirm June 15th. So if you wouldn't mind, before we circle back to Forest Lake, if we could maybe just skip to the scheduling portion. Because we originally had Thursday, June 18th as the date for the next workshop. We changed it to June 23rd, but a couple folks had conflicts. And so second alternative date would be Monday, June 15th. And I just want to, while we're all here, obviously Doug's not here, but we'll connect with him after. Does that work for folks, or should we look for an alternative date?
June 15th works for me. I looked it up, so.
Yeah, same.
Okay, awesome.
In the evening again?
Yeah, same,
I just checked 6 to 8.
6 to 8.
Yeah, if we're good with just always doing 6 to 8, that was the top time slot that was chosen by the managers. So we'll always assume that. All right, very good. I just wanted to make sure we got that because we got to get that special meeting notice out. Okay,
Yep, it's 15th is okay with me.
all right, awesome. I'll reach out to Doug and make sure. All right, so getting back, just kind of concluding our budget highlights by Lake Management District. Similar to Bone Lake, Forest Lake, we've got the watercraft inspection budget. And this one, there's 3 boat launches on Forest Lake as opposed to 1 boat launch on Comfort and Bone. And so the budget kind of reflects that. And then the Washington County grant and tri-party agreement, got some estimates there, but those remain to be confirmed. And then some funding for some AIS surveys, as well as treatment on both Shields Lake and Forest Lake. So kind of similar to Moody Bone in that way as well.
I see that you're switching Blue Water Science from full point intercept surveys to meander surveys. Is that permanent or just for this coming year?
It's just for Shields Lake, and we will still do full point intercept surveys on a 5-year interval for all of our lakes for the plan. But we had been doing it annually for Shields Lake because it's a natural environment lake. And it was required by the DNR. But after a few years of it, our staff's been working closely with DNR staff. They said, you can switch to a meander survey. You don't need to do full point intercept survey, given the data record that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll result in some savings because the point intercept surveys are more time intensive and more costly.
Yeah. Because Comfort
Um,
Lake will provide that additional difference to do point intercepts surveys. I think I brought that up before, but that's a commitment for this year. They haven't sent the dollars to you yet. We will.
a point intercept survey on an annual basis?
Yes, yes. But there's only a difference, I think, of about $1,000 to do the meander versus the point intercept. And so we've got grants from the county that we need to have a little bit more detail on. And so we'll pay that difference.
I see. Okay. I assume you've been in communication with Mike Sandiger about it.
Well, I think I've mentioned it I haven't talked to him directly this year, but I'm sure Mike, our CLA president this year, I'm sure he might have, but I'll make sure. I'll follow up, Emily.
Okay. Well, and I'll follow up with him too. I'll send him a message.
Okay.
Okay. And then we mentioned the sequential diagnostic assessment for that as well in the Forest and Fields Lake area. So kind of looking at the water quality record for Fields Lake, and we know there's going to be seasonal variability. It's not going to be perfectly below the state standard for every single data point for every single point in time. Some variability makes sense. And especially for a shallow lake like Shields Lake, it is prone to pretty dramatic swings in water quality. But even with those considerations, the water quality ratings aren't where we want them to be. And so we're hoping to get this grant and do a deeper dive on the data around Fields Lake. Okay.
I'll say.
Say, Emily, before you leave that, I had mentioned that shoreline restoration was really a critical issue for Forest Lake chain of lakes. And so I think, and as a result, it should be an issue for the watershed district. I would like to see us put in the costs that we're going to spend on shoreline restoration, that we're spending on shoreline restoration just for Forest Lake. I don't think you have to put it in the other lake budgets because it's not an important issue for them. But whatever aid and time is going into that, plus the outreach program that's been dedicated to the shoreline owners of Forest Lake, we need to have that as a line item on this particular chart. I would like to see it there. Just reinforcing that it is a priority. Otherwise, it gets lost in the outreach program. And I think I'd like to see it separate.
Yes, so just the other day, I was kind of talking to staff about it about, there's about 1,500 individual lakeshore property owners in the district total. 950 of our Forest Lake. The majority of those that are in need of restoration are on Forest Lake district wide.
I took a boat tour yesterday and
Right,
all around Lake 3, and it's
yeah, it's
kind of an uphill battle.
right, so it's another area that we are actively trying to expand the net, so to speak, in terms of our grant. Procurements, but yes, as noted earlier, it's of statewide significance and we're trying to develop. Well, we've been a leader in the conversation, at least with Minnesota Lakes and Rivers and DNR and others. We've been at the table early on in those conversations, but yes, it's a big challenge. So, and really just trying to right size it, trying to make sure, because like a lot of our work, we're not taking it back to what it looked like when 3 Europeans were here, but rather, how do you get the majority of the benefit from the least amount of expenditure, cost and time and elsewhere. So.
Okay, good. Thank
Maybe
you.
we should get signs we can put out in their front yards that say, facing the lake first. That would grab attention. Well, does that need to be broken out in the budget itself, or can that be a sub, category for, what we're doing now? I mean, the board pretty much said when that program was being designed, it's for Forest Lake. We don't need
Well,
it on the
I
others.
think
But-
this is a separate chart, so so it should be, it can be put, because it's like management chart, right?
Mhm.
So we don't need all the costs there, but we need that one because it's a high priority, as I mentioned before. And I think the other thing is that it probably makes sense in the education outreach section is to have a separate line item for the outreach for the shoreline.
But my
program.
point is, does that have to be in the budget document, or can it be a corollary item that, we give the details? You know, where what we're going to spend in each area, kind of like we do now with the annual, their annual work plan.
I'll have to see when we get to it,
Yeah.
what it looks like. I just don't want it to get lost in the,
No, I
Education
understand, I
outreach.
understand, but we're trying to get a, a top level budget, so we don't have all that detail. It's pretty detailed now, so, but it could be very easily done for whatever section we want to do. Here's the detail.
the issue we have is we have an outreach program. We started with very little money and we put more money into the outreach program. And then the shoreline program came up, which by the way, could probably use all of the outreach money very easily. Because we give grants and everything else. So what I'm saying, if it were treated more as a project, even though it's in the program area, it would probably be getting more money. But anyway, by breaking it out, we can see actually how much money we're spending on it and how much less money we're spending on the rest of the outreach program for the rest of the constituents. So it's an area that we need to spend more, because we're getting good results. Adam's doing
Yeah.
great work, right?
Yeah.
So we can give more money and we're gonna get more results.
Yeah.
And so, but we gotta do it in the right way.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is that we use the same format where you've got the detail underneath each header. But on the budget, you don't have to put all that detail, but you can have a separate sheet that goes with each one of those categories that says, here are the projects designated for this 2017 budget.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'd be a lot easier. And then people could go online and look at the one they want to look at and say, okay, here it is.
We can do both. We can add that to, the slide, mention of the shoreline program there. And keeping in mind that putting an exact dollar amount on it, we can give an estimate of the staff time and an estimate of the materials and events and things like that. But there is a lot of overlap between shoreline outreach and our newsletter and the Comfort Lake delisting event and like other events that we have dovetail with the shoreline outreach. So putting an exact number on shoreline outreach alone is, there's some gray area there with the overlap it has with our other messaging.
Yeah.
Here is the budget overview as it stands. We're going to continue refine, as projects progress, as grants are awarded. These estimated year-end expenditures may still change as things move on, as we can refine our estimates and get them more accurate throughout the year. And same with, the grants and other revenue spend. If we get some other grants and we think those can come online in 2027, we might bring forward a recommendation for, revising this section. But we think on the whole, this is kind of a good starting place for the budget overview. And where we think, we'll be at year end, going into 2027, and then that then feeds into the other pages that we have prepared for you with the expense revenue recap and projections. So, with that in mind, obviously it's a lot to take in. It's kind of this format that we've had. We can certainly prepare additional detail and breakouts and write-ups of, all the various things that we're doing. And we bring forward plans to the board for all these programs. We have an annual education and outreach plan, the monitoring plan. We can build upon that data and have, even more information in the budget packet. But just kind of considering where we are at right now, I wanted to do a check-in since we're past 8. We had set some objectives and checkpoints for where we wanted to be at the end of workshop 2. And so just kind of taking the time through assessing board consensus on the draft budget, identify areas where we need to work toward consensus. So, and then I don't want to move on until we recap any directives that we've gone through. I've got some highlighted in the notes, but just kind of opening it up for discussion of where we're at with the budget. What kind of things do you want to see staff do or change between now and our next budget workshop on June 15th?
Well, I would like to see a pro forma version of what I've been asking for, and Judge Schottmuller has been asking for, and that's the direct overhead, including all salaries, on one line item under the general fund. And I would like to see the breakout between the salary and the benefits, so that we know insurance, it worries me. I think, you know, being a business owner, I saw those wild swings. We get 20% increases in 1 year, and you've got to be prepared for that stuff. And if it's all hidden in the budget, then we don't have an opportunity to weigh in. All of us will have different opinions of it, of course, but what to do about a situation like that. So I'm just much more comfortable seeing all of that, not put down into the areas. I understand why that's necessary for grant work, but that's a working document to me. Always has been, always will remain. And what we need to see on the budget is what kind of money are we talking about for each of these sections? And if we don't get that separated, we've all been sort of living under this cloud of what we actually spend. We typically get last few years anyway, we get a budget dollar amount. And how it gets spread out is, you know, is up to the Interior needs. But for the budget, we should know, the public should know what we need for keeping the lights on and the staff working. So that's not as clear as I'd like it to be. So I'd like to see that difference. And then anything that's overhead related, also in that general fund budget. And if we have anything that we're using out of the general fund to do matches for our grant programs, then we need to know that too. Emily talked about this new grant that we can use for that, and that's great. But if it's not enough, it's gonna have to come out of the general fund somehow. And there's no recognition of needing a reserve. And we need a reserve. You can call it something different, carryover fund. But we've got to have enough money in the 6 months of the next year to cover that overhead.
Well, I think, have you looked at the new budget format?
Mhm.
Okay, well, I think we should go through that next week, next meeting,
Mhm.
go through this and the projection out for say 10 years,
Mhm.
whatever it is, and then look at all the assumptions that have been made. There's been a lot of assumptions made,
Mhm.
and see if we agree with those assumptions or not. You and I and Emily met, so you've got what she wants, so maybe you got to put that together, or whatever you think or she heard you want, put it together, we can look at that.
Yeah.
After we look at this, so maybe have it behind this one. Is that,
Right.
for that particular line for next meeting?
For tonight, we don't have the.
We don't have time now.
Yeah, we don't have time now. We did create the form that you asked for.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be able to provide that for the next meeting.
Okay.
We will split out we can easily split out the benefits, cost of benefits versus salary,
You can just put a footnote on it.
right?
I mean, I still remember my benefits were 38% of my total salary. So, you know, just have a footnote on it. You don't have to show all the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just for clarification, you know, it would, President Anderson, we say, well, if we needed more money for something, we would take it out of the general fund for a project or something like that. That never occurs. It will come out of somewhere in the implementation fund. The general fund can contrast to every other entity, city, townships, or anything else. The general fund for them is their operating funds, not for the district. It's all right for administrative funds. It's a goofy thing that the legislature did when they wrote it into statute.
Wrote what?
The
Interesting.
difference between the general fund and the implementation fund.
Yeah, I'm not saying those two are the same, but my point is that we had 1,000,003 over 10 years or 12 or whatever it was. At least 10 that we were using to pay for that 10%. Started out at 20 match or 10%. And that came out in the budget process last year. So I'm not talking about anything that we haven't done.
Isn't the 1,000,003 that total fund balance?
What's that?
Is that what you're talking about, the fund the reserve fund balance?
Yeah, but where's that coming from? That's the
It's
other thing
loans.
that's gonna be,
It's the, right,
Oh,
it's those,
that's not
it's those
reserve,
drawdown
that's
loans.
not a reserve fund. That's a fund, that's a pay back the loan funds.
Right, but we don't pay on them unless we draw, and we don't draw on them unless we need them, right? Isn't that, am I saying that wrong?
$1.3 million
remember that.
fund balance is
Yeah.
the total fund balance. So part of it is the implementation fund, part is the general fund, which is administration, and then part of it is the debt services fund, which, Jim, as you're saying, is designed to be drawn down. So that one should be negative each year until it's gone. And so when we look at I'm just showing the total here, but you go up and into the budget packet itself, and you see the net change in fund balance for each of the three funds that we have are broken out for general fund, debt services, implementation. And then the total at the bottom is the combination of all three.
So again, I think we should go especially through the 10-year chart. That gets into some of the discussion you're having right now.
What,
We go through it.
you're referencing the loan fund.
But that's the 1.3 I thought you were talking about. That's why it's literally says 1.3, so I was assuming that's what you're asking about.
The loan fund is only a portion of that. fund.
Yeah,
Okay,
So there's three separate funds included in.
oh, yeah, that's what she was just saying.
Correct. So I think that's where, if we sit down at the next meeting, go through that, it may shed some light on that, and how the reserve fund is there and how it's utilized.
which fund?
Because the reserve fund.
I can't understand what you're saying, I'm sorry.
The reserve fund.
Oh, the reserve fund, okay.
But it's a
Okay.
3-part something he was saying, so.
Right.
But
It's
where do you-
comprised of three separate.
Okay. Yeah, you better, let's not,
Go through it, it's
Let's-
pretty clear. Just go through it.
let's. Please, let me
Yeah, sure.
give my opinion. You know, you give yours, I wanna give mine. Can we meet on this separately as he did so that I can get this, we don't have to wait until next meeting. And you can explain this to me. I will show you some examples that I'm used to working with. Because it still sounds to me like you're dividing money that goes somewhere else and you're putting it into another schedule, putting it into another line item. So I need to be clear on that. If I can spend 10 minutes with you, it will be clear.
As treasurer, I don't think we should change the format we have right now. We're at that meeting.
Madam President, I think-
So that's as simple as that. And then if we want to change it as a group, when we talk about it, and it's fine for you to meet separately, but I don't think we want to have a separate format for next meeting. Except as the backup, maybe to look at.
I wanted to have him do this backup so that you could all see what this looks like, okay? It's not done, I understand that, or there's some version of it that you have. And rather than taking up time at the next meeting, I'm asking for 10, 15 minutes, whatever it's gonna take, for you to sit down with me and tell me what you have. And how this is all
That's fine.
moved around.
Yep.
Well, it should be fine.
Yeah,
And
we
you're
said,
not the final say. because
we were
you're the
trying to get
treasurer.
it in this meeting, but we ran out of time. So it takes a little bit more than 5 minutes to look at it. So Emily and Brad can run you through it and
You're not the final decider on this. You
I have
have-
something to say as treasurer,
Yes, well,
as far as changing things.
no, you don't. You're
I
just
do.
one more board manager. That's the truth. So give me a time and I will come in and sit with you, okay?
You can do that, yep.
Okay.
So next meeting, then we're going to try to go through the the higher level stuff and all the formats we have and the different funds that we have and so forth, so everybody's clear on that. And then there's a lot of assumptions built into that, which everybody has to look at ahead of time and come in with an opinion, whether they think it's too high, too low, or whatever it might be, and then we can try to get some agreement on those. A lot of good work has been done, and they've met the objectives from what I can see, but we need more eyes looking at this before we say it looks.
The one question that I would just, we don't need to talk about it tonight, but the one question I have is, there's a difference between the 10-year plan last year and the 10-year plan this year. And going forward, there was a dramatic decrease in levy of 10 years, and that decrease is wiped away. So I'm just wondering who made the decision to not continue on the decrease of the levy, and it's fine with me, I just was wondering how that happened. So we can talk about that next time.
You're right, there's room to reduce the levy, and that's the board has to decide that. Staff came in to give us a more conservative approach with just one levy increase and not reducing it, so that gives us a little bit of.
When did that discussion take place, or did I just?
No, staff did it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we should be approving what staff recommends based upon what they hear us talk about. And there were some very
This is
clear
gonna be
things.
for you to consider.
Yeah.
And then absolutely, as discussions take place, we can raise that or
Yeah,
that, whatever the board feels appropriate, how we're going forward.
But Manager Anderson is right too. We need we're still by the skinny of our teeth getting by every year. And so it's probably good to have showing no reductions. We may not be able to live up to that. That's what we have to discuss next time. So, and that's what people are gonna be looking for, especially the CAC. But this is a vast improvement of what we showed them last year though, so.
But the PAC is advisory, don't forget that. We don't have to follow what their recommendations are.
But
And
that's
the
not the
other-
only thing they've been very aggressive on though, so I think
Well,
we should
yeah,
pay attention to them.
But we're talking about 4 people here. You know,
4 very good people though.
yes, but we shouldn't just take that perspective into account, is what I'm
Right.
saying. Don't put too much emphasis on that, because the overwhelming response that we get is that you're doing a good job. We like what you're doing, keep up the good work. And we have to take account of that too. You listed quite a few things here that you want to have watched in your sub-watershed. And Bone Lake has things, and so we can't shut that off entirely.
No.
We've gotta have enough wiggle room so that we can handle things like that, the initial part of it, until the grant comes in. So I'm just saying that,
I wasn't asking for more money, I was asking for visibility,
well,
that's all. So it doesn't get lost.
but you know,
So,
people wanna see things done, even if it's in the approving stages. You still have to have some reserve fund to handle those situations.
okay, Emily, anything else?
I think we can leave it there. We'll be prepared for the next meeting on Monday, June 15th at 6 p.m. Yeah.
I guess I'm just assuming a little bit about some of the priority suggestions that were made, that we might even include those in. So actually, Doug wasn't here too, so people can react to it in writing if they see something different than last time.
But rather than putting it in the budget right now, should we just have a outline of all of those?
I mean, I was talking about upfront priorities,
Yeah.
because that was a discussion that we had. And some people didn't, looks like you had all your priorities pretty much in here.
Mhm.
I was sitting back to see what came out from staff and from what you and everything else, and then, so my input was more today, based on what I had seen the last.
But in past years, when we focused on each of our sub-watersheds, it was all about that sub-watershed. For 2 or 3 years, you know, there might be a project that we brought in for emergency purposes. It's the other thing is we don't have an emergency reserve. But that's the same thing as sort of unexpected. You can call it different things, but if something horrible happens, we're not gonna have any leeway. So it's good to not get so tight that you can't breathe.
Right.
Okay, and with unpredictability, as we have in climate, and as we have with any ecosystem, you've gotta have a little cushion.
I think we'll get into that as Jim was observing, we have room to reduce the levy or increase the levy, we've got things we can probably
Mhm.
change some of the priorities and not spend the money on that, because it's maybe not as important as other things. Maybe it's important just to build up a little bit of cushion so we don't have to have.
Yeah, but
Something.
when you're working on the sub watershed level, and that is our time now after 20 years. Is to have some time focused on little comfort and big comfort.
Right.
And the amount of work that has to be done is diminished from the very beginning because we've done all of that up, from the headwaters down, yeah, upstream, thank you. So it's working out, so
I know it's working out, working
yes,
out beautifully.
but don't try to take away the focus that we've been waiting. Lake sub-district and so on. And that's how it's coming out from you, is that
No,
don't
it's
do
not,
this.
I just suggest, I
Yeah.
wanted to understand what the projects were, and most of them were water quality projects.
Well,
Which
other
is fine,
things.
which is fine.
There's other things too. It's not just that. We've talked about this. It's green space, it's climate control. It's all of those floodplain, all of that is intermingled in what we've been talking about for.
And I'm
Or
not
the
against any of
sub-watershed.
that, I don't think it should all be
Yeah.
done. My question was that, what's happening in the other areas? In a similar scale with floodplain, et cetera, et cetera. And staff has got some ideas in that area, and now we're gonna hear about. it.
Well, we're definitely going forward with the floodplain and the green belt because they're intermingled. So we're.
Well, we have $49,000 for floodplain for next year.
Mhm.
That doesn't sound to me like it's an overwhelming a lot of money.
I think this is planning though, that's right, that's the planning money, we didn't agree to do anything yet.
After 5 years,
Like,
so,
Yeah.
We've done a lot of work. All this background work takes time.
I know it
And
does.
now we have all the data that we need, we have the photographs that we need, or maps that we need, excuse me, we have the prioritization, delineation that we need. And so now it's just a matter of working with our partners.
Getting the best projects.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So it's coming,
and
and we
we-
did the same thing with phosphorus, Jim.
And we can do the,
We had all these ideas and we finally decided which ones we were gonna work on.
The district has invested a lot in H&H modeling to
Mhm,
get
I know.
us this
That took a couple of years,
multiple years.
Yeah.
mhm.
and the money,
And I'm not.
so. It's just a little, that's scary. But. We'll get
Alright.
there, and then we still got the battle of getting the city to work with us on this too, so.
Right, but
That's why it's probably better to go a little slower to see how things are going.
Actually, I think when we come back to that next meeting, some of the questions that were brought up, I know I had a few, but, I think we should have some really good data, especially that one on the impact to home insurance. If we can get all of that together in this nice presentation, I think we're gonna have a win with the public. Well, the city is gonna have to listen to a public info meeting and see if their position stands true or if the public wants that protection.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jim. I think that the insurance industry is not gonna pay a bit of attention to what we have to say about it, no matter how much money we spend.
Well, we're not
Plus-
saying anything. What we're asking them to do is their calculation. If you have a city or entity, a government entity that is going to put protection for their citizens first, and they improve, or even, I don't want to use the right word, but, I'll just use improve.
mitigate,
They mitigate, thank you, they mitigate the risk for that citizen base of having these horrible events.
Well,
And so with that data, it's all math, and so they do their own prediction then, okay, if you say that, let's say 50% of the people that live in that area will be shielded from having these issues,
Well-
then this is what happens to your interest.
it comes to mind right away is San Antonio. San Antonio is always constantly being flooded by heavy, because it's straight through.
Yeah.
So they built a dike around the whole city, and they've got gates that close off when it
Mhm.
rains and people can't drive in or out when there's a flood. Because they're surrounded with water. So let's see what kind of insurance discount they got.
Did they?
I bet they don't get any of it. But somebody could look at that as a case study and find out really quickly whether they're gonna respond or not. But I
Well,
agree with you.
The other one is.
They love increases.
The other is, of course they do, but when you've got data that shows as righteously as that is, that you're saving lives. You know, let them answer that question too.
Yeah, there's other ways for pressure of the city, I think, we're trying to get the insurance companies involved.
Yeah, it's lives. You wanna protect the lives and property of your citizens.
And I don't think we can afford a moat.
No.
Okay, good meeting.
Mhm.
We don't have to adjourn or we just.
It's a workshop, we're done.
Thanks,
Alright.
Emily. Good work again.
Well, still, managers, it is still a special meeting you do.
We do have to adjourn? Okay.
Okay, I move that we adjourn.
Can we call it a workshop and not do this?
Second. Special meeting.
You're still gonna count it,
All
right?
right, yep.
Motion, seconded.
Alright, Shopmiller,
Yeah,
Aye.
Schmaltz,
Aye,
President Anderson.
aye.
Did we lose our, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
they already left.
okay.
Dave had to drop off. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.